So I didn't get around to recording the intro that I wanted, so I'm doing it right now. Today's topic is going to be 5 misconceptions of the Christian faith. And we're going to touch a little on biblical history, and we're going to get into a lot of scripture. So welcome to Armor of God. I'm Gregory Williams. Let's get suited up.
There are numerous accounts in the New Testament as well as the Old Testament that show the multiple sides of the unity of God. This is expressed in its wholeness, of course, in the New Testament. Most clearly shown in Acts 5, John 1, and Philippians 2. This is also shown in Exodus when Moses speaks to the angel of the Lord on Mount Sinai, as well as the pillar of smoke and fire, and most popularly, the burning bush. Which is why Christians hold to the belief that the angel of the Lord is Jesus pre-conception. I believe the misunderstanding of the triune nature of God is lost in the tri portion of the word, which is why people completely skip past the un portion. Leading to the question of how can 3 be 1? But multiples making a single is not unheard of. You can have a car, but when you break it down, the steering wheel is not the same as the wheels that touch the ground. They serve different functions. The same could be said for God. The Spirit serves a different function than the Father. The Father serves a different function than the Son, but they're all one God. Our second misconception is what people believe we believe about the Old Testament. The verses we'll be touching on are Romans 15:4, Luke 4:14 through 17. The Old Testament is loosely quoted over 1,000 times in the New Testament, with over 280 direct quotes. 3/4 of the Christian Bible is what we call the Old Testament. All of the apostles used the Old Testament. Jesus himself quoted from the Old Testament and makes mention of it when explaining that it's one of the reasons we should have faith. The Old Testament also has prophecy of future reigning kings, the coming Messiah, and explains the character and nature of God. So to Christians, the Old Testament is equally as important as the New Testament, just for different reasons. Our third misconception and misunderstanding of the Christian faith is the covenant system. Most people just don't know how to deal with the covenant system, so we're going to try to break it down. The books, chapters, and verses that we'll be covering is going to be Genesis 1:28 through 30, Genesis 9:1 onward, Genesis 12:1 through 3, Exodus 19:5, Leviticus 8:10, 2 Samuel 7:8, Hebrews 9:15. The Edict Covenant. I believe there are 3 acts in the Eden Covenant. First, God gives dominion over the animals and tells man to multiply. Second, they can't eat of the tree of good and evil. And third, they can't come back into the garden. The Noahic covenant. God promises to never flood the earth again, and through Noah's family, they will populate the earth. The Abrahamic covenant. Abraham is told he will give birth to a nation, and his seed will be greater than the numbers of the stars in the sky, and circumcision will be the sign of his covenant. The Mosaic covenant. The law in making Israel a holy kingdom of priests. The priestly covenant. The consecration of the Levitical priesthood. Davidic covenant. David is made king and given a lasting kingdom. The new covenant. The grace of Jesus Christ through his final sacrifice, the fulfillment of the old covenant, and the promise of his return. Though the Old Testament is one of the most important parts of the Bible, we as Christians are not pigeonholed to their covenants. We are only held accountable to the new covenant, which is a covenant expressing the Shema, loving our neighbor as we love ourselves, and the acceptance of his gift of grace. Our fourth misconception or misunderstanding of the Christian faith is that we are pacifist. And I think there's several places in the Bible that don't teach this, and at least one instance that we're going to go over a few different times. So the books, chapters, and verses that we're going to go over are Luke 22:36, Mark 11:15 through 17, Matthew 21:12 through 13, Luke 19:45 through 46, John 2:13 through 17. This misconception about us comes from the passage explaining how we should turn the other cheek. Matthew 5:3-9. But earlier in the same chapter it says, if your hand or your eye cause you to sin, then you should cut it off or cast it out. Now, anyone who thinks that they should limit their depth perception or be an amputee is completely missing the point. Jesus in this case is intentionally being inflammatory and provocative to illustrate the importance of forgiveness and to show just how hard it will be to become one of his disciples. Jesus himself was no pacifist. He flipped over tables and used whips to drive out money changers. He engaged in arguments with the leaders of his time and put his disciples in their place when necessary. He was no stranger to confrontation or physical force, and I don't believe he taught his disciples to be either. Our fifth and final misconception today is who wrote the Bible? Most people have an idea that the biblical characters fell under some trance, or that the Bible just fell out of the sky, or it's a similar deal as Muhammad and the Quran. But this can't be further from the truth. Our books, chapters, and verses that we'll be looking into is Luke 1:1 through 4, Exodus 17:14, Jeremiah 36:4, Romans 16:22. The short answer of who wrote the Bible is men. This is where we get a lot of the names of the books, like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Now, it's important to understand that authorship in the ancient world was not what we understand it to be today. So when we think of books, and authorship, we think like Stephen King. Coming up with a concept, sitting down at his computer, typing it out, and then sending it off to his editor when it's complete. This isn't exactly how books or scrolls were written in antiquity. Let's take the book of Matthew, for example. It's believed that Matthew is not the author in the sense that we acknowledge authorship. His gospel would have originally been given orally and dictated later by scribes and students. Another example of authorship from antiquity is Socrates. There isn't a historian that believes that Socrates wrote anything that we have today. He'd have given lectures and his students would have written down what he said and passed it along. Similarly, this is how we got the Gospels. It's believed that John either wrote or dictated, more likely dictated his books, and Luke was hired to investigate and write down the accounts of his findings. It's believed by some scholars that none of the Gospels were written or dictated by the names assigned to them, but were later given as a way to pay homage to important characters. Because all of the earliest information I've seen on this says that Matthew was originally given by Matthew, as well as Mark by Mark, Luke by Luke, and John by John. I believe that Matthew and John are actual disciples that dictated, and Mark was a scribe or student of Peter, and Luke was a scribe for Theophilus, because the oldest recorded traditions say so. I just want to add that only 7 of the 27 books of the New Testament have been put into question for reasons widely regarded as resolved as far as the church is concerned. For example, 2 Peter was in question because we really don't know when it was written. It may have been written after his death. We also don't know who wrote Hebrews. Jude mentions 1st Enoch. These are just some of the books and reasons as to why they were in question. Lastly, I want to explain God-breathed. This means influenced by God, but written by man. Every Christian agrees on the 66 books of the Bible being God-breathed. Some groups argue for as many as 18 more books, but at least the 66 books that we have today were widely regarded as scripture. In other words, we know these books to be God-breathed. As always, all praise and faith to His amazing grace. Pray for me as I pray for you and continue to wear the armor of God.
Saul Williams, what's your suit up?
Hi, I'm Ezekiel Williams. This is my evil brother right here. Let's not get suited up, because I don't want to be sued!